From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you all once again across Central Florida on FM and AM, on our flagship stations as we build our network piece by piece, based on freedom, based on personhood, treating human beings as neighbors, not as collective cogs in some kind of machine or some dumb, old, stinky ideology. Whether it's fascism, Marxism, any of those isms, they're disgusting. We have no time for them. We want to think as human beings. And that's why we're glad to have you. If you're joining us on News Radio WFLA Orlando, 93.1 FM, 540 AM, we're happy to have you. Great to have our loyal fans here. We've been listening to you together for 2 years. Or maybe you're joining us now on WHBO 1040 AM across Tampa Bay. Maybe you're in Sarasota, Clearwater, St. Pete, Tampa, Brandon, wherever you're coming from. We're glad to have you on radio. And if you're listening to us on our podcast, we thank you. Please consider sharing a review. Share it with friends and family. This is a program unlike anything else. We have nuclear scientists on this program. We have economists. You're going to learn something on this program. You're not just going to get the same old blame games. You get on a lot of conservative media, and all they do is talk about, look at the media, they're censoring us. We don't do that. We'll talk about it when they're censoring, but we actually provide solutions. We actually provide medical doctors on that talk and get into the technical science about nutrition, or the way the body works, or we'll have the best physicists and chemical engineers and talk about the way energy can be done in the future. All this stuff you get exclusively on aneighborschoice.com. You don't want to miss it. Visit our website, aneighborschoice.com. If you miss an episode, subscribe there, and we're glad to have you. One of the things I talk about on this program a lot is what I believe to be critical for the future, and that is educational freedom. We have to be able to have educational freedom if we want a country that is going to be prosperous, okay? We cannot continue to rely on monopoly to do our education. And right now we have a monopoly-based education system. One size fits all, amorphous blobs is what they want us to become. And it's something that we can't tolerate. And so now with this pandemic, a lot of the forces of collectivism, they've overplayed their hands, and they've potentially started to kill their own golden goose. Their golden goose was the fact that people were lazy, unfortunately, and sometimes distracted, and they allowed generations of people to be raised by monopoly government bureaucrats that destroy creative thinking. They destroy the ability to understand the power and dangers of Marxism and fascism, and then that creates generations of stagnation. Well, now we have the chance, because they're trying to get folks to be terrified of going to school. Now they've overplayed their hand, and now folks are saying for the first time, maybe it's time to go to private school. Maybe it's time to join a micro school with a bunch of families together, or maybe homeschooling. So to discuss these issues together is someone who is a homeschool mom herself. She's the host of the Luminous Mind podcast, Rebecca Bowman. How you doing?
I am doing awesome, David. How are you?
I'm doing great, and it's great to have you on the program. I've been on your podcast where we talked about anthropology and mimetic theory, but your main focus on your program has been to inform and equip your listeners with the resources they need to homeschool, right?
Yeah, definitely. It started out that way. I wanted ordinary mothers to, talk to other ordinary mothers or families, I guess. There's a lot more people homeschooling these days than just moms. But started out kind of like that, where I just wanted to be able to help change other people's paradigms much quicker than my own came along. It was like, for me, it was like a 15-year journey, and I wanted to see that go faster for other parents so that they could actually love and enjoy and see that it was so easy to do in some ways. So, yeah, that's what we focus on, and we are kind of switching platforms where we want to focus more on parents and trying to change their mindset. I think kids, I have a ton of kids that come up to me all the time that want to be homeschooled. They see the freedom. They know they can learn more on Google or YouTube than they ever could on, going to and sitting in a classroom. And so I think I'm kind of trying to switch that to parents, where we're working on trying to change their mindset as well. So
Right.
that's kind of the focus.
So what has your impact been? Have you seen a change in the atmosphere from parents as you engage them about homeschooling, especially in this pandemic?
Yes, this COVID, the situation that we have here has really been an eye-opener for them. I know last spring I was just inundated with, as well as, many of my other homeschooling friends, inundated from other parents that wanted our opinions because, a lot of what the teachers were expecting, if they were expecting anything at all, was, their child in front of their computer for 5 hours a day. And I had one parent that, was just berated by her teacher that she wasn't spending enough time with her child, even though, she had 5 children. And she's like, well, I can't spend all my time just with this one. But isn't a classroom of 5 much better than a classroom of 25 or even 30? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in my opinion, we are seeing a huge influx of homeschoolers. I've gotten several job offers from different online schools as well that are just working to enroll as many students as possible because they're just seeing a huge influx of students like, Corey DeAngelis talked about in North Carolina that just happened. So it's been a huge shift for many people. And then, the stuff that we've seen lately with the teachers unions is another big eye-opener for parents. I also heard a lot of parents that, they were finally seeing what their kids were learning at school, and they were shocked about what the curriculum was about and, the stuff that they were being fed at school. And I think, public school it's created a lot of apathy for a lot of parents that we just think that we can send them to school and, they'll learn and they'll get a great education, but that's not the case anymore. So we're seeing a huge influx.
Yeah, what are some of the things they're shocked about that kids are learning today in public schools?
Well, probably a lot of the stuff that you talk about on your show, that corporate Marxism and those ideas that maybe our nation, I know our nation has a lot of problems and history is always written by the winners, but they're shocked about how degraded everything is about the founding of America and the freedoms that we have. Most kids have no idea really what their rights are. It's definitely moved to a socialist or even almost a hyper, we all want to take care of the earth and do all of that kind of thing. But in public school, it's kind of gone above and beyond that, where it's gone almost to worshiping the earth. Those are some things that I think parents are extremely shocked at. Also, the reading is highly sexualized. There's a lot of things that little kids are exposed to that parents don't really necessarily feel comfortable for their children at that age. And so there's just a lot of things that, those really progressive ideas. And I'm a person, I love progressive, I love ideas, I love new thinking, I love all that stuff. But it's definitely age appropriate, and it's really not one-sided. It's all, like you said, that corporate Marxism that we're seeing. So
yeah, and you're
some of those topics.
You're in Idaho. Is the curriculum there even like this too over there?
I think the curriculum's like this anywhere. Because I have an international podcast, I have lots of people that reach out to me from all over, not specifically from Idaho, but yeah, I mean, that's even a shock here in Idaho. A lot of parents seem to think that because we live in a rural area where many people are, close to the same religion or this belief in God, that the teachers are all going to be preaching those same things to the parents. We do have, in my particular district, I think they did a really great job on making sure that, and they really understand online education. I've actually worked with them a lot, but that's because I think they've been doing this for decades, and that comes because of a lot of school choice in our district. And I, don't want to toot my own horn, but I was one of those parents that kind of pushed for more school choice. And because of that, when parents push for more freedom, more school choices, more options for their children, it creates districts like mine where they're a little more open-minded, and, they didn't miss a beat on being able to get things out to their students. But I think what frustrates a lot of parents mostly about the education is they see a lot of it as busy work too. I think locally that's been the complaint I've heard here, that there's just a lot of busy work in education and not real learning, not, that meat learning that parents want to see. So
yeah, because ultimately government schools' philosophy is a daycare with an added bonus of trying to get you to be a kind of conformist, and that's their agenda. Got to make you a conformist, and also got to make you a daycare facility. That's what their job is. And I think people have to take a real hard look and say, is this something, do I have any right to complain about a total Marxist destruction of our society if I'm not willing to roll up my sleeves and do something to stop the spread of these bad, bigoted ideas to the next generation? We'll continue live on A Neighbor's Choice with Rebecca Bowman as we learn more about the coming homeschool revolution and what we can do to be a part of it. Back in just a moment.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Acton Academy. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Acton Academy will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Acton Academy. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson. The Ted O'Neill Law Firm with principal office in Houston, Texas is responsible for the content of this ad. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is one of the most common cancers in the United States. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were exposed to Roundup weed killer, you could be entitled to cash compensation. Bayer, the owner of Roundup, will pay more than $10 billion to cancer victims of weed killer Roundup. Call our weed killer cancer hotline now to see if you are entitled to cash compensation. Roundup has been one of the most commonly used herbicides in the U.S. If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and exposed to Roundup, call now. Our attorneys have the experience and specialize in fighting for everyday people to get you the compensation you deserve. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were exposed to Roundup weed killer, even if the loved one has passed away, call 800-605-3017 now to see if you are entitled to compensation. But hurry, time is limited. Call 800-605-3017. 800-605-3017.
Windshields are all about safety, and Auto Glass America continues to insure yours. Now that we're into phase 2 and more businesses are reopening, we'd like to remind you that if your windshield is damaged and you have qualifying insurance, we'll install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Either at home or back at work, we'll come to you with free mobile service and maintain CDC guidelines for social distancing. Plus, you'll get up to $150 cash back for your windshield. 813-96-GLASS. That's 813-96-GLASS.
This is going to be the Moab, the mother of all boat parades, in honor of the 45th President Donald J. Trump. Go to hugeboatparade.com. Join the team that's going to break the Guinness World Record. Go to hugeboatparade.com. The largest parade of boats is happening in the Pinellas Intercoastal on August 15th in honor of Trump. Be a part of history. Go to hugeboatparade.com right now. Tell them, Donald.
Huge. The biggest in the whole country.
Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gronowski, your host. We're talking about homeschooling, resources for new people considering private school or homeschool or some combination. And we're doing that with Rebecca Bowman, who's the host of the Luminous Mind podcast. which is all about this topic and things related to parenting and homeschooling. And, you know, Rebecca, it seems to me that this pushback, I saw Harvard lost their mind that people would homeschool, and I saw all these folks really just going crazy, and they're probably going to get worse and worse as they lose power. It reminds me of what other monopolists in history do. The banks, whenever the banks are worried about competition, they go to government, they create the Federal Reserve Act, and they eliminate as many banks as they can. Then they go and they create automobile companies, and there's a bunch of automobile companies. And then the top guys say, hey, let's get together, let's buy off some cheap politicians, we'll regulate it, and we'll make it look like it's for the little guy. They'll buy it. We'll tell them we're doing it to keep them from getting hurt in a car accident or something, and we'll just make it so impossible for anybody to start a car company. And then they do that. And then you go over to education, and it's a little easier there because they've already got fully, you know, socialized services there. It's not even don't even have to make an alliance with the private sector. And so there they just say, oh, wait a second, you're trying to get out of our schools? No, we want you to stay in the, you know, the system we have. And so we're going to get really, really scared, and we're going to try to scare people into conformity to go along with, I don't even know what their recipe is. What are they going to do, make them do like busy work for a few hours a day? Is that their plan for the public schools?
For all day, yeah. For definitely all day. Yeah, I thought the Harvard law thing was pretty hilarious. You know, homeschoolers have been demonized by government schooling for decades, and teachers unions. You get on the National Teachers Union website, and they just talk about how we're all a bunch of just religious quacks that don't want our children to be out in public, and you know, that kind of thing. And that isn't the mood at all in homeschooling. I mean, when you get out into it, you realize that it's a very diverse crowd. It's not just all a bunch of just weirdos, you know, like you talk about all the time. We were the scapegoat. And then when they saw that they didn't have a choice, that all these kids had to go home, you know, it was just kind of hilarious that Harvard Law magazine went after homeschoolers when they were all essentially homeschooler, you know, at that point. It just seemed like a really bad timing for that. But they are scared. You're exactly right. You know, you talked about before the break, you were talking about how, you know, the schools are the babysitters, but I actually see it a lot different than that. And I was actually talking to a teacher this last weekend who said that it was really scary as this whole COVID thing was going on, and parents were freaking out, and they were calling the schools and stuff. Some of the administration had said to him that we needed to get these kids away from their parents, and that really bothered him as a teacher. You know, he sees that having a good relationship with the family and the home is essential to great learning, and really bothered him. I'm excited to think that hopefully there are a lot of great teachers. I love teachers. You know, I try to do everything I can to be supportive of teachers, but they're definitely stuck in a system that what other options do they really have? We try to start charter schools. The state gets involved in those and, you know, makes it this bureaucratic nightmare for teachers. It gives them no autonomy whatsoever. And then, you know, a lot of us with our homeschooling, a lot of great online schools as well. But once again, you know, because of those stupid public dollars, we end up having just an incredible amount of bureaucracy that, and it doesn't give the student and the school the flexibility that I think you need to be successful. But teachers are not the babysitter. We have turned, the parents are now the babysitters for the state. And sadly to say, I mean, in our local district here, they feed them. Almost every meal, maybe except for dinner, but they always send them home with a snack. There's all kinds of services and different things provided. And then I always find it funny or interesting maybe when a parent, their children grow up and they find out their children are socialists or Marxists, but they've been brought up in the system was all about that, just government involved in everything. So, I want parents to start thinking themselves. They don't want to be babysitters, right? These are children that we love. This is our family and our future, and we want to take, like you said, roll up our sleeves and take our power back. And I'm really hoping that with this COVID situation and schools refusing to open up and overplay their hand, like you've been talking about, that parents will decide to do that, and some great teachers too, starting up these micro schools as well. So.
What about the private schools sector? Are they seeing a big uptick in people going in that, or how does that? Are they doing stuff online? Is there an increase there?
Well, yeah, I've actually talked to a lot of private school teachers. A lot of my podcasts lately. Acton Academy is a great resource. There's a lot of Sudbury schools that are wonderful, and they have seen a lot of activity. Unfortunately, a lot of the teacher unions are also trying to ban anyone from private schools as well. And that's one reason why a lot of teachers tend to go. I just talked with a great leader, Acton Academy out in California, who talked about he didn't want to take any public dollars. He wanted to go private, so he had the autonomy to teach the way that he knew needed to be done, where he was allowed to help students learn not what to think, but how to think, how to be that free-thinking, entrepreneurial-minded. But everything is an uptick now, and it would be great if, like Corey DeAngelo said, that the dollars could follow the child. That would be huge. My kids participate in something like that in Idaho right now. We only get like $1,700. It's kind of a joke, but at least it's something to help homeschooling parents or parents that want to go in a different direction find something new for their kids.
Yeah, it's something that I think you touched on there that I think is important, which is, it's not about what to think, it's about how to think. And I think that's what we need to continue to explore as we continue on this program is unpack a little bit of that, what that looks like. And we'll also, when we continue, have to address some of the common concerns that, parents have. What is, by the way, the biggest, pushback that you hear from parents skeptical of homeschool or micro school type programs?
Well, the biggest pushback, I think, and those are all going away too, is that, they want their children to have that social life that's really important. They want their kids to be able to go to prom. That's a big one. I don't know why we had children in 12 years of schooling just for prom. That just seems silly, but we do all that in the homeschooling realm, micro schooling, private schooling. We all have proms. We have kids involved in activities. It's definitely, I think, this COVID thing too was this COVID situation. I got a lot of parents like, wow, if this is homeschooling, I want nothing to do with it. And we as homeschoolers were also freaking out because most of our schooling isn't done at home. Most of our schooling is done in community. It's done out in the rest of the world. And I think that's the biggest, most common concern is that parents are afraid that their children will not have that social life that they want. But I can guarantee you now that if you have your children home and in micro schools, their social life is going to be 10 times what it will be in the public education system. So
right, very interesting.
No need for concern.
Yeah, the tables are turning against these people who overplay their coercion-based blueprint for controlling people's options. We'll continue live in just a moment.
You know what time of year it is.
Hurricane conditions in the next 36 hours.
You know what hurricanes can do.
Devastating damage expected.
Well, we want you to know, no matter how bad things get,
Power outages.
This is life-threatening.
you can stay up to date with the latest information here. Your home for news, talk, and information. And remember, we'll keep an eye on the tropics. You keep an ear on us.
Got batteries in the flashlight.
The all-new News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Here we got our radio.
President Trump visiting a fracking hub on the West Texas Plains.
My administration is announcing today that export authorizations for American liquefied natural gas can now be extended through the year 2040. 50.
He's also doing some fundraising, but he didn't talk about COVID-19 in one of the nation's hardest hit states. Texas and Florida both setting daily death records. Johns Hopkins University says the virus is now blamed for more than 150,000 U.S. deaths. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos says he can't guarantee that his company isn't accessing seller data to make competing products.
We have a policy against using seller-specific data to aid our private label business. But I can't guarantee you that that policy has never been violated.
The company one of four tech giants today at a Capitol Hill hearing. The Fed is keeping interest rates at record lows and will continue lending programs that help the coronavirus-battered economy. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. Happy to have you on FM and AM radio, as well as podcasts and video live stream. Excited to talk about something that I think is core to our mission, which is empowering the individual person up against collectivism and all of its deceits and its desires to control people for, selfish ends. And we have here Rebecca Bowman, who is the creator of the Luminous Mind podcast. You can visit her website at theluminousmind.net. And Rebecca, I wanted to ask you, so what is the difference of the mindset that says, hey, we're just only concerned about what to think versus how to think? No one's teaching that in public school. How do we process stuff? How do we weigh things? How do we have discernment between, competing claims about reality? And you're not getting that in public school, right?
Well, definitely not. Anything that the government does, they move super slow. You think about the history of education. We always talk about these micro schools or homeschooling being a new thing, like this is a new form of education. No, this is like generations, hundreds of years old. The new education is actually the government schools, and they roughly started back in 1837. It was when the first free public school was, and in less than 200 years, we can see that it has been a huge, a dismal failure. Because at the time that it started, it wasn't. They didn't start public education because there was a problem with people being able to read or the literacy rate or anything like that. I mean, you think about that pamphlet, Common Sense. That was understood by the common man. I think the reading percentile back there was in the high 90s, back in the 1700s. And most of it was because parents were either teaching at home, teaching their children how to read with the Bible, or joining some kind of micro school. And with government schooling in the last 200 years, it hasn't changed. I mean, we are still in the era of, this is the pre-internet, before you could Google pretty much anything. And we're just trying to fill these kids' heads with knowledge. But technology is changing so fast, there's no way that we can educate our children for the world that they are going to see. I never thought down the road I'd end up being a podcaster, for example. I never thought I'd have my own show like that. And it just goes to show you that we can't continue to teach kids what to think anymore. It's how to think, how to learn and how to unlearn, how to take what's not working for them anymore, to unlearn it, to learn something new. And I think that's one of the saddest parts. We talk about this a lot on my podcast, is that, we see our country spiraling back to this, make America great again. No, what's happened is, as things have moved on, and because we were all publicly educated, we never learned how to unlearn those things and learn something new. Mm-hmm. And that's really, I think, the goal I'm hoping that most homeschoolers have, is that we're there to teach our kids how to think, not what to think. And with the internet, with the large variety of options these days, it's so exciting to think about that we can and do those things of teaching our kids how to think, how to learn those things. And the goal for many parents, especially when you become a lifelong homeschooler like myself, is the main concern for us is that we teach our kids a love of learning. We teach them to be self-directed, and we want them to be lifelong learners. Unfortunately, we all went through the public system, and most of us parents even hate schooling. Most of us hate it because government schooling sucked all the life out of it. We were just sat in a chair and taught things that we didn't really care about, right?
Yeah, and you get lack of sleep too, especially when you're in high school, in a public high school, and you procrastinate like I did. You stay up real late writing your essays and so forth, and then you have to get up so early, and it must have done something to hurt my development, because I can't believe that's healthy to get 4 hours of sleep every day, to do that. But that's what happens when you're a high school person and you want to. It's the kind of content that they're teaching is not very conducive for teaching critical thinking whatsoever. I remember I was lucky that I had folks that, like, for example, I had a history teacher in high school, and I remember, he knew that I was asking questions that was way beyond the scope of the textbook. So he pulled off kind of in a dusty, dark corner of his own, file cabinet. He said, "Here's this." This is the good stuff. And it was a politically incorrect guide to American history by Dr. Tom Woods, And I was in high school.
Awesome.
And, who would know later on I'd be having, Tom Woods would be having me on on his podcast, and all this stuff would have happened. But at that time, I read, he said, "Here you go." And it was kind of like a underground, like, okay, I can see that you're not buying this garbage stuff. Well, here's the good stuff. Go read this, and they'll teach you some of the counter facts about the propaganda view of history. And it's stuff like that. I remember I had an economics teacher in high school, and I started, he could see I was asking questions, so he said, come to my desk, and he said, "Let me tell you about the Federal Reserve." I said, "What's that?" And I was like, "Why don't you tell everybody else?" He said, No. I got to stick to the curriculum. But if you want to know more,
Exactly.
here's, so he told me about the history of the Federal Reserve Act, and that sent me on a journey. But it's those moments. There's folks in the public school system. We're not trying to demonize it. A lot of great people who are trying to guide people in that prison system. But nevertheless, we have to seek people to get out of that. And I think that all these great teachers that are in government school, they'll make better money, and they'll have a better experience working in the private sector alternatives if we move this forward.
Well, and that would get rid of our teachers' unions, too. That's really the crux of our problem here, is that with teachers' unions, with one system that teaches one thing, and government schools, they are going to teach the students the most positive lights of our government. Who didn't learn that the World War II was a great thing for us to do because of the Great Depression? And all of those the programs that those presidents put into place, they were needed because of these situations, and come to find out, no, that's not the truth. And that's what I really want to see parents do this style of education, because it was a life changer for me. I learned things that I never learned in school, and we learned them together as a family. And that's what I really hope, like you said, roll up the sleeves and let's as parents start to learn. Let's start to learn about some of these things that we didn't know about because the government school wanted to shine such a light on it. And I agree. I think that teachers, we could create a system that would be amazing for amazing teachers. And they could go like any other job. They would be able to, if they didn't like the way that one school did something, they could go to another school and work with that. They could start their own school. There could be a plethora of things that teachers could do if we had more options, if there weren't those teachers unions. And unions are all about just for themselves in reality. It's not about trying to make the system better for the teachers or for the children. It's all about trying to strengthen the union, strengthen their agenda. Some of the things that these teacher unions are asking for aren't even anything to do with children or schooling or teachers or anything. It's all about, you know, some social agenda that they have globbed onto for some reason. So
yeah, and
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, can you imagine if the government had a monopoly on food service? You had to get your food at one government shop in your zone of district, and it was unionized with a public sector union. I mean, it'd be the worst food ever. It'd be awful.
Yeah,
and we already have a lot of regulations and everything that makes food as bad as it is today. But just imagine if we went to the level of food production that we do with education production. It'd be terrible service, low quality, terrible nutrition, terrible price, terrible cost, terrible accountability to the customer. And that's exactly what we're doing with government education. That's exactly what we're doing to our most precious resource, which is our children, right?
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. That's something I guess, you know, I've thought of it before because I've been in this realm for quite a while, but I love what Corey DeAngelis is saying. I have never really thought about it this way, but those people who are needing the money, and, you know, poor education is hurting the poorest among us. You know, a person who can afford to go to a private school, they have options already. But the poorest among us don't. And I worked alongside of a lot of, you know, people from New York or different people like that wanted a better education for their children because their schools are literally school to prison pipelines, you know, because the education is so poor. But if we could just do what they do with like food stamps or something like that, where the parents get the money and then they can choose where they want to go, what a game changer that would be for so many families. The cool thing is, too, is that when parents are given the money, one of the things that I've seen is that opens the parents' eyes up. You know, once they have the skills, basically, you talked about that, been removed from their eyes. Once they have an option, once they know where they can go, all of a sudden it opens up so many things for them. That's one thing that's really cool working with a lot of different school choices. You know, Acton Academy, I've mentioned them before. They do a lot of parenting classes. They teach parents how to parent correctly. Because that, you know, that's one thing. Homeschooling is an extension of parenting. We have lost our ability to parent. Public school has taken our kids, and we don't even know who they are. We don't know anything, really how to take care of them, those types of things. We have lost our ability to parent, and that's the cool thing, that once the parents are given choice about their education, it makes them better parents. I've seen it so many times, and I think it could be a huge change in our society just by offering choice. You know, homeschooling may not be the answer for every person. Micro schools are amazing co-ops, you know, where you go and everybody works together to educate their children. But it is a big eye opener for parents once they have the choice. And you know, you see those with the DC voucher programs all the time, that those parents are finally given a choice and they start learning themselves. So it's an amazing power. You know, education can change us.
You're speaking with Rebecca Bowman, a podcast host of the Luminous Mind. I wanted to ask you, what is a micro school? Because I've heard that word a lot. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, in homeschooling, we've been doing micro schooling for a long time. A micro school is basically where, you know, 4 or 5, maybe 6 different families get together and they all teach a subject that maybe they know a lot about or something that they're passionate about. Sometimes you can actually even hire a teacher to teach those specific subjects. So it's just basically a tiny little school. Have you ever, I'm sure people have heard of the one-room schoolhouse. That's what a micro school used to be. It used to be children of all different ages coming together to learn and about a certain topic from different parents. And it doesn't have to, that's another thing too. I think there's a misnomer that we have to have these Taj Mahal type schools in order for children to really learn well. No, that's not the case at all. We just have to have people who are passionate about their subject matter, and like some of the teachers that you had, you know, that could steer you in different directions when they could see your focus and your love. And really, that's what a micro school is. It's kind of that one-room schoolhouse. And if we had more one-room schoolhouse situations, we would not have bullying. I'd highly recommend, if parents don't know about this person already, but check out Peter Gray's work. He has a book called Free to Learn. He'd be amazing to have on your podcast. But he talks about how those multi-aged group learning situations are so powerful to get rid of bullying, to get rid of it helps create leaders out of the older kids, and it gives younger kids somebody to look up to and somebody to, respect and that kind of thing. It takes a lot of that. I think a big problem with of how we see children is the hierarchy out of education. The upperclassman is the cool one that we should all look up and revere. And when we have multi-age groups and we have parents that are humble, people there to learn along with the kids, all of a sudden we see a huge change in that hierarchy learning, that we love and respect each other. We have more, I don't know how to describe it, but definitely more love and understanding, more empathy for each other, for sure.
Back in a moment, live on A Neighbor's Choice, more about homeschooling and how it works when we continue.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
Hey, it's Bubba the Love Sponge. With all the coronavirus stuff going on, you've heard the CDC say wash your hands about a zillion times. Studies show that the average person touches their face 23 times an hour. Your nose, eyes, and mouth, that's called the T-zone. And the T-zone is the most important area to keep clean. And for over 12 years, there's this product called TheraWorks Protect. It's been used by millions of emergency room patients and medical clinics to support infection prevention. TheraWorks Protect is easy to use, and it's safe to apply several times a day on your hands and around your nose and eyes and mouth, better known again as the T-zone. Just apply a small amount into your hand and rub it in until it dries, and then apply another amount and rub it all over your T-zone. Finding hand sanitizer sometimes can be difficult, and now you can order TheraWorks Protect online. Just get it directly from them. Go to TZoneProtect.com and use the Bubba Kicker. When you use the Bubba /, you're going to get 20% off and free freight, and you're going to have it in a few days. Again, TZoneProtect.com /Bubba. Start protecting yourself and the ones that you love now.
Coronavirus is threatening the entire world. Could you protect you and your family? Even getting tested can cost you up to $3,200 out of pocket. Would you be able to afford that for you and your family? Well, free Obamacare will cover and protect today. New insurance may cost you nothing. Zero premium plans are available. If you've lost your job, you must call 877-652-0244 or text VIRUS to 919191 or log on to freeobamacare.com. Call us today. We'll get you enrolled, get you qualified coverage to protect you from not only this outbreak, but day in and day out sickness and illness. Our plans cover visits, testing, emergency and urgently needed care, medications, and more. Now more than ever, you need to act now and call now. No long lines, and we can get you coverage today. That's 877-652-0244 or text VIRUS to 919191. That's 877-652-0244.
Soaring high across Central Florida on FM and AM, Tampa Bay to Orlando to the Space Coast, where we have our vibrant aerospace industry in this time of people looking for hope. And I think going to the stars, going off and innovating is something that speaks to us at our most core for our love of adventure, our love of a pioneer spirit, not waiting around for people to print us checks out of thin air because we went to government schools and didn't realize that creates taxation and destruction of wealth through inflation. So joining me now is Rebecca Bowman, who is the host of the Luminous Mind podcast. And I wanted to ask Rebecca, what are some curriculum, resources or websites that you like yourself or recommend to folks who are ready to make the start and they know there's so much information out there and they just need a good advice about where to start getting curriculum that's reliable, that gets folks what they want?
Wow, that's a huge question because there is a lot of resources out there, many different websites that you can go to. You could start by Googling it. I really have loved the Ron Paul curriculum. I just actually started that a few years ago with my kids once it was completed. And the cool thing about that is that there's so many, wonderful educators that he has pulled together to teach those classes. You could actually even go to different universities and take courses from them, different either Harvard or MIT or some of those as well. I'm trying to think what else. I've done a lot of online schooling as well. There's a plethora of different schools, Connections Academy, K12.com. I love those types of schooling because I almost feel like they're the gateway drug into homeschooling, because you start to see the freedom and flexibility, and then you could see what more it could be, because a lot of those schools, the state has gotten involved and they want, so much time in front of, like in some type of online class. But really, we want to focus on great curriculum. We want to focus on the things that our children love. That's actually where I would start. I don't know if I would necessarily start with, like, this is what your children should learning. First, I'd start with buy-in with your kids of what they want to learn. Sometimes focusing, okay, we're going to work on reading and math, definitely. And then what are the subjects that you want to learn about? That's the cool thing about homeschooling, is that we can customize it for the kid. And once we have buy-in for what they want to learn, they're going to be like complete sponges. That we won't have to force them to work. We won't have to. And that's really the hard thing. Like when we try to run school like the government school does it, we will fail almost every time, because we are using aggression. We are using force, and we know that doesn't work. We talk about those non-aggression principles all the time. And in parenting, I think that's really important. And I'm not saying that parents be like a doormat and their kids walk all over them. And of course, you have more life experience than your young person. But if we are learning together with our children, a great resource to go to is to check out unit studies. I had a lady on my podcast not long ago that talked about how her daughter was all involved in horses. So, they sign up for riding classes, but then she wants to learn about the horse. They learn about biology. She learned about the history of the horse, which brought in a lot of American history. She wrote papers about horses and what she had learned. You can do a ton of things that help your children love to learn in subjects that they want to learn, and they won't ever have gaps because they fill it in with different things. I had a daughter who hated history, and I tried to do through our homeschooling co-op. We did an American history class, and it was okay, but she's not passionate about it like I am. And one day she's up at my in-laws' house, and her grandpa has this really old map atlas book. So she takes it home, and it's back in, it's from the 80s, and so she notices all the borders are different than what they are now. well, what that did, she started writing papers and learning about the history of all these countries and, you know, what their governments looked like and all of that kind of thing. So I think if we can really start with that, of what our kids' interests are. You know, we've done studies with bugs and dinosaurs, and, you know, and once kids are excited about learning, we won't have to force them. And I think if we want to start with those non-aggression principles, we need to start in our own homes first off, so that they learn to be free people, be liberated people, for sure. So,
well, what do you think about people that parents that say, well, I'm worried I don't know how to teach algebra or trigonometry or those things. I need to have an expert. So, because I've heard some say, well, you know, I don't want to have them their own freestyle education, and then they're not able to get into college because they don't know the things that they need to pass to get into college.
Well, there's a lot of resources online. You know, there's Acton Academy. He's an excellent teacher for math, and that's where those micro schools really do come in handy. You know, I always was horrible at math, and I do remember when I first started homeschooling, I would get a lot of people that give me flack about, you know, I'm an ordinary person. I'm not like, you know, I have a bachelor's degree in art. You know, I'm not an educator at all. But the neat thing is once I started doing math with my children, I actually was understanding it much better than I ever did in high school. And I was able to teach it to them to a point that they could take off with it on their own. I have a son who just finished a college trigonometry class, and, you know, I never took trigonometry. He got an A in it. I do think that maybe sticking with some of those basics of math and reading, like I said, and then adding in some extra things that they like to do might be important. But a lot of homeschoolers also study for the ACT and SAT, and they actually end up, a lot of colleges are more interested in, you know, what they can build. You can build your own high school resume of the things that you learned, things that you did, and then what those ACT, SAT scores look like. They don't necessarily care about, you know, having this well-rounded curriculum and the grades and all of those things that we've been told that that's what they care about. But there are plenty of kids that go to homeschool or that come from homeschool, go to college, get full ride scholarships because they've done amazing. And colleges love homeschoolers because they are self-directed learners. They don't have to force them. There's no adulting problems either because they've learned how to take care of themselves. You know, they've watched their mom, or I had to help with a lot of the activities of the home, of like making dinner or doing your laundry, or those are also important skills, right? We cannot learn those skills. We can't learn those skills in a semester of home ec. But I had a son that went to Russia. I never worried about him once about not being able to, you know, eat or clean his clothes or be able to, you know, get around or pay his rent or anything like that, because he had grown up watching me do these things, and valuable life skills that we can't discount those either. So, well,
Rebecca, I appreciate your time. No, that's very good. A lot of good stuff. And I was thinking of the Ron Paul curriculum. I think Ron Paul, as an intellectual, could easily mop the floor with all the stooges like Elizabeth Warren and all those clowns. So if he's got a curriculum, people need to check that out. Visit Rebecca's website, theluminousmind.net. I'm David Gronowski. Godspeed.